ever. Show to your friends and family back home. I do. That's what I do. When I go home for the holidays, my parents and I we get some popcorn and we watch these tutorials. It's a really good time. I swear. So let's just say I want a solid material. I want a transparent material, and maybe I'll just leave it at that. Oh, and then I want maybe a core material. So all I'm doing is just saying new layer, new layer. And I'm just going to change the colors of those by clicking them. So I'll make my solid white, double click, make my transparent kind of sea green, and I will make kind of a brownish orange, brown, lightish brown. Okay. So what I also might do, I usually like to have like a kind of sketch layer that I work off of. So I just have lines that I use. I'm also the kind of person I like to actually put numbers in front of layers, just because I reference numbers more quickly in my mind. So that's step one: organize your model by layers. Step two is the rendering setup. But what I'll do first is I will maybe just make a little object to draw. So, I think Emmanuel was maybe talking about structure, right? So if I come to my kind of viewports here, I can start, say, with my sketch layer. So I double click that, and this is in meters. So I'll maybe make and I'm gonna put ortho on by hitting O. So now I'm only drawing in this direction. So I'll make a 3-meter wide room. 3. And I'd do another bearing line down this way, say for 5 meters. Maybe I want to make that, so I'm going to offset that. I want that to be like a kind of circulation core, so maybe I'll say that's like 1.5 meters. And then I'll maybe just kind of, might be thinking this through a bit too much, but I'll just make these into grid lines. I'm just going to extend them. So I hit extend. If I double click, I can just extend those as far as I want. Boom. So this is kind of like a little corridor thing going on here. I think I said and then I'm just going to extend this as well. So I get a little grid going. I'm going to offset that another, so 5 meters just for austerity's sake. Then I'll just do a little tartan grid thing. I'll offset that again, but I'll do that 1.5. And then I will do this 5 well. And maybe these I'll do a little narrower, just to give a little shape to it. So I'll do these at 2 meters. No, 3 meters. 3 meters, let's say. 3 meters, let's say 4 meters. 4 meters. And maybe I want to get a little fancy, so I'm going to give myself another little buffer zone here, 1.5 meters. So, it's good to maybe have some kind of structure to work off of. And then maybe I want to work in, I'm just going to move this. Maybe I want to work this in elevation as well, so I know how, and so I can zoom selected here, so now I'm just zooming in and out on that. But this will let me kind of say I want to know my floor levels, so I can just copy a line up, and I can copy it 3 meters for floor-to-floor height. Does that sound right? Eric's nodding, so we're in good shape there. 6, how many stories want to go up? Maybe go up another story, 6, 9. So now you have a kind of scaffold, hopefully, to work with. I come back to my perspective view. Let's see what that does for us. So then if I want, I can make another line, and I can just type in perp for perpendicular, and that will snap into my line there. I can just start to actually build up a little structural grid if I want, as a way of maybe setting up stuff later down the road. So there I have a little kind of basic scaffold to work with. And I kind of like this tartan grid idea, so I'm going to take this and copy it. Oh, copy it there, and then copy that there. All right, so I'll just leave that for now because I want to move forward. Maybe we'll come back to that. Rendering setup. When you get to your computer, if you're working on the lab machines, you'll go to renderer, and you'll say current renderer, and you'll say Maxwell for Rhino. So that's the platform that we're learning. So you want to make sure that, because by default, it's going to be set to current renders. By default, it's going to be set to Rhino render, or it might be set to V-Ray. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. The main windows that you want for Maxwell, and I'm using an earlier version of it, but a lot of things should apply. So the plugin windows, so Scene Manager, that's kind of like your main dashboard or your main control thing, and I'll come back to that in a second. The other thing, and this is the biggest reason why I'm like kind of sold on this as a platform. Like I've used a lot of different renderers, and I kind of like this one. So when you see me navigating around, I select something. I just type, if I type ZS or zoom selected, I zoom in on that, and that helps me kind of just navigate that. Because sometimes, say, I have a point here. If I zoom selected on that, sometimes I'm like, I am zoomed in on that, and I'm like trying to get over it. You see how kind of awkward that is? So I just delete that, pick that, zoom selected. Another sidebar. You'll see that I'm using, if you have a software that you use and you have quick keys that you like, you can actually set up your own quick keys. So under options, if you go to aliases, you can actually type in your own little letters and stuff. And what's nice is you can then export that into a text file, and then when you get to another computer, you can import that text file. So this is a workflow thing. So you'll see me making little quick key things that the software itself doesn't necessarily have, but the same commands. So the other window is something called Maxwell Fire, and it's not going to look all that awesome right now, I don't think. But what it is it's kind of a live update of your scene with your materials on it. So you don't have to, like with other rendering packages, you kind of have to render, test render, test render, test render. But with Maxwell, what's nice is you can actually see what's going on from the get-go. So your scene manager, bring that back up, has a series of tabs up here. Don't really need to worry about this tab. That's just different options. This tab is going to determine just what your file name is, where your files go. I would make sure this box is checked, append camera name. So that means every time it renders something, it's going to add the camera name. So basically, if I have a really awesome view of my Lunenburg bump here that I want to preserve, I can go here. I can say right click, set view, name views, and I can save as bump 01. And so when now this view gets rendered, I will know it's from that view. And another thing I can do, viewport properties, I can play around with the lens angle. So by default, it's 50. 35 is a more kind of natural angle. And if you get on these like really crazy interiors, sometimes you can go to a 29. But it gets a little more distortion then. And so then you can just say set view, this guy, no, sorry, go home. No, that's fine. Viewport properties, 29. Let's see, let's set view, name views, and then hit that, say save as, bump 01, overwrite, yes. So that's just going to update that. So where was I? Coming back to the plugin window interface, the scene manager. So that's the camera name. Most of your defaults are kind of okay. Make sure multi-light intensity is checked off. I'm kind of just going through. So this is options and output part 3 right now. So those are kind of the major things to check off on that. Then the next panel, this is part number 4, environment, location, and time. So this is environment. So your environment, by default, you're going to have, I think, none. I'll uncheck that. So I think that's going to be your default thing when you get the screen. So we'll see what that looks like for a second. And also, I'm going to can I delete these? Well, we'll just leave those alone. When I go to my Maxwell Fire window, oh, seen as errors. Never seen that before. Okay. Let me do something here. Just gonna Control copy, Control new, cancel. I'm just gonna start a new folder so you can see what the defaults look like and where it goes from there. New, large objects, meters. Any questions so far? Yeah. Yeah. So what I'll that's a good question. So close that. So if I'm here, when I type zoom, you see ZF show up there. That's that. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So yeah, you'll be able to see it. And I'm trying to narrate as I go. So, if you, so I had, that's, I think, I don't even know if that's from Rhino or not, but you can also type zoom, and then you can say selected. So, just doing that. So I'm just going to, this is just Control C, uh, Control V. So I'm just pasting. So I'm going to zoom selected on that. If I go to Maxwell Fire initially, let's see if we get the same. No. So you can see how it's kind of like dull and gray and what have you. So that is not having anything set up. There may be some materials applied because those came in, but otherwise nothing's much set up there. So I'm just going to go to my scene manager. And so the environment, okay, so it's sky dome by default. So I want to use physical sky, and I want to use the sun. And so what that's going to do now, you'll see that automatically update. Maybe we'll try. So now you can see that there's shadows being cast. And so then what's nice about that, and I'm sure that's, is, so then you can play around, say, with the temperature of the sun, so that'll kind of change the color of it, say. You can also play around with the power of it, so if you want to like make it super bright, you can just play around with these values, but typically you don't necessarily need to. So this is another really nice component to it. So you may it may show up like this. You can just hit this little globe, and that will enable the sun view. And what that does is you can then see through the day it tracking, right? And you can change your, so we're in Halifax in Canada, so we'll scroll up to Canada, and we'll go to Halifax, that's us. So now I've changed my location, and then I can change my day and time. So maybe I'll go to the solstice. Have you guys talked about any of this stuff yet? Solstice and all that stuff, right? So now you can kind of go to your, studio person and say, look, I did a sun study. So if I go there, and I go here, and I go here, I can kind of output a sun study of my project. And so I can change, from that to, well, I can change time of day. Whoops, that's going to night. So I can see how that's tracking in June from, from building to building. I can then see how it's tracking in December 21st. We got much lower sun angles, right? So you can kind of just check that out. And typically you do like at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m. Those are kind of like the benchmarks. So we'll kind of go in the middle here. We'll go to March 1st. So that's the location and time. So then you can also adjust your camera. So if I come down here, let's see, find a good spot for that. So that's this guy, that's the camera. I can change the, if anyone here a photographer? You kind of know like f-stop and all that stuff? So you have a bit of an advantage here. I'm not much of one. I just play around with the numbers sometimes. But, you can basically make this look brighter, or I'm just going to radically change some values here. So you can kind of play around with those values a bit. That comes in handy maybe when you're doing an interior scene sometimes. So you can see how that, which again, this interface is so helpful because you can just see automatically what the implications are from what you've done. You can also change, and so this is kind of an important value, your output. This is going to be the size and pixels of your image. So if you have that really high, it's going to take a long time to finally render. If you have it fairly low, it's going to be very pixelated. So you kind of want to do, if you're doing drafts, you can have those numbers pretty low. If you're doing something for a presentation to go on a board, you can bump that up into a higher value. And so that's kind of those guys. Extensions you don't need to worry about. And so what we'll do is we'll get into materials. For the sake of time, I will just grab the object I had from here. So I made a couple little interlocking boxes. We'll see how these look. And I'll just, what I did there, sorry. This is hide. And then to get them back, I say show selected. Not show it, show selected, and select these guys. And again, for selection, right crossing just gets anything that's in the window. Left crossing, you have to get it all the way around. So those guys are then selected. I'll copy my grid too, just for the sake of it. So Control copy, Control V. So it should pop in right in place. I'm going to just now, so here's something you can do if you want to move layers. I'm going to set up new layers. I'm just going to change all those to the default layer. It's going to ruin all their material assignments. And what I did there, this is a layers tab, and you can just, these are changing object layer, it's layer on and off. So if I want to just turn one layer on, I can say select that object and say, that messed up. I just want to turn that one layer on, select. So it leaves that one layer on. So for materials, the first thing I'm going to do is going to make sure, in order to use this guy, that my materials are in the right location, on the right object. So this guy is grouped right now, which is why it's all lighting up. So I'll just ungroup them first. So you can group objects by just selecting them and typing group, and then you can move them very easily. But I'm ungrouping it right now because I want to move that object to my glass layer. So if you have a glass box, I want to move that guy to my core layer, and then I want to move that guy to my solid layer. Say OK. Now I also want to locate this in the model. A lot of times I also like to copy things. It's virtual, so there's no cost virtually for copying things. And a lot of times when I copy, I will copy in increments. Like I just type 200, just because um, um, that way I can quickly things back and forth if I ever need to. I'm going to now go to ghosted view. So to do that, I go Control Alt G. I can also go up here and say ghosted. So now I can kind of see through there transparently. Because what I want to do is I want to locate my building. So I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to draw a line here, typing L. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this line that I drew because I like that line better. I'm going to project those lines onto my surface here. So project, select, select, select those objects. Now I'm going to project onto that surface. So select that surface. And there you go. I have those curves now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this guy. So if I group him, I'm going to grab him. I'm going to copy him or her. You name your buildings. Who has a male building? Who has a female building? Who has a transgender building? All right, thanks. Good. So I'm going to copy this guy here. And now you might want to be making a site model too out of this. So maybe what I'll do is I'm going to hide this for a second. And I'm going to, I can remove an object from the group. So I'm going to remove from group this guy. So then I can copy him back here to there. And what I want to do is I want to make a little cutout here. So one of the things, and this is good actually for you to know for if you're making a design. So say you want to, I can type box, I can make a box. And if I want to manipulate that box, I can say, and when I zoom, I just type Z and then I do the window. If I type move face, I can select any of these faces and I can move them. Right? So that just lets me adjust the dimensions of those. And so if you're using like a kind of orthographic building, you can use that to move those things really well. So I'm going to move this face here. Oops. I actually have a quick key for it. I'll do that. I'm going to move him up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to join my base to my top surface. So that's now a closed poly surface. So it's a chocolate bunny. You guys ever chocolate bunny for Easter? Yeah. So it's a closed poly surface, meaning it's watertight, and that's what you want to do this operation. So I'm going to do a Boolean difference. And so I select that. And so Boolean object is just, Boolean means true, false. So you can have a difference, you can have a union or an intersect. So I'm going to subtract this out of that. So subtract from that object, the object to subtract. And so now I have a little pad, landing pad for my site. I'm going to show my building. And now I'm ready to apply some materials. So quick ways to do materials. Scene manager. So these are all, I'm just going to delete all these. So new material is just, it comes up as a material. And if you double click it, this is your kind of interface for changing the materials. So BSDF is a kind of unique thing for Maxwell. It means bidirectional scattering distribution function. But the beauty of it is you can make all sorts of different materials by playing around with it. So your basic material color, if you select this, so first off, you can just rename the material by going here, selecting that, and I'll call this solid. So this color here is your basic like diffuse color. And so then you pick that, you get a color picker. I think they might even have a more sophisticated color picker. But you don't necessarily want to go bright white with it because that will just wash everything out. But you can kind of come down to about 220, 230 with that. And you'll see it updates automatically there. So I'll just say OK to that. And I'll make another color. Oops, I'm not going to get into emitters. Sorry. I'll make another material, and I'll call this, I'll just leave it as it is, and I'll call this gray. How do you spell gray? E or Y? E or A? I'll just do E. Is that the British gray? Same? Yeah, okay. Doesn't matter, right? I can then copy that material, clone material. I don't know why I have two there, but so I'll pick that one, gray 3. I'll call this light gray, and I'll go here, pick that, and I'll bump that up a little bit there. So it's very subtle, but I think we should be able to get some differentiation. So right now you'll see there's nothing really loaded here because I copied that. So if I refresh this, it should show everything up okay. And okay, what's going on here? These, oh, I picked the wrong, what did I do? Where am I? Control file. So it looks like everything's already mapped onto this. So that wasn't supposed to happen. Hold on a sec. Am I in the wrong file? This is, no, in class. This is the new file. Okay. I copy pasted the wrong guys. Let's see. Show selected. So I thought I put those. Oh, I moved them to the layers. Floor glass solid. What did I do? Okay. So let me just do something here. I think I made, because I had these layers, but there were no objects on them. So let me just do line. Oh, sorry. Oh, it doesn't matter. Okay, line. Hang on. Bear with me. All right. So I'm just going to move each of these objects to, I'm just going to bring those layers in real quick. Move object to layer. That's new design 2, solid. Okay. Same function, transparent. Okay. Same function for okay. Spacebar is just giving me the same function over and over again. Control copy, close all this, close that, Control V. I'm just going to repeat everything for all conflicts. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so this is the layers that I want. You can see there's no layers assigned. That's what I wanted to have set up here. So now I will ungroup this, sorry, and I will move object layer to, this is new design 1, I don't want that, new design 2, transparent, okay, I'll do this again, okay, and one more time, solid, okay. So, now if I go back, Maxwell, plug in export, Maxwell Fire, and this guy, this little, so that the red starts it up, and then that refreshes it, and it's still remembering. Thanks, Eric. Glad someone's paying attention here. Besides, or because I'm not, clearly. All right, so move layer. Try this again. No, move layer. I'm gonna just collapse that. Okay, so I want to go there. Yes. Try that again. Oh, that's, see, it's just tempting me. It's playing with me. All right, so let's try this again. Maxwell, rendering export, Maxwell Fire. Here we go. Okay, yeah, so it's ugly gray. That's what I wanted. I mean, I don't want that ultimately. That's what I wanted for now. So basically what I can do is, oh, I'll just keep that up. Rendering export, Maxwell Fire. So I'll take my site. So this guy, I can find out what layer he's on. So he's on the layer base. So I'll go to base. So that's gray. It's already got that layer assigned to it. So you'll get, if I'm just going to assign, so assign material, browse. I'm going to just select gray 2 because we have that. Then I'll say okay. If I want to then these are the design sketches of the objects, and I want them a little lighter, but not super. So I have gray light, but I'm going to change it to light gray. Same idea. And then I can activate that. So they're standing out a little bit. I might adjust that. But the point being, so now when I want to assign my layers to here, my materials to there, if I click on this, so this is the way you assign the layer, is you hover or assign materials, you hover over that circle. If you click that circle, it brings up this. So this is the default Rhino layer assignment. So you want to click this guy, assign material by plugin, by Maxwell for Rhino. And then you can browse to the material that you made. So I'm going to do solid. Say OK. And so you can see now that changed everything to solid and to solid white. Now why it changed the whole object to that? Geez. You know, should just start with a blank file. So in any case, I want to change the, so what I want to do next is make a transparent material. I'm just going to gloss over that little moment there. So I'll go to Scene Manager. I'll make a new material, and I will double click on that. So to do a transparent material, some basic settings, if I can recall this, is basically the easiest way to do it is to, I'm not going to go into making glass or anything like that, but I can just select a color, say OK, and I can go to the layer, and I can just change the opacity of that layer. And so that's making it somewhat transparent there. And so that's the way I can make a transparent material. Oh, and I got to rename that. So I can just rename that. Oh, transparent. I'll have you out of here in a second. So that's now a transparent material. And then I want to, assign my core material. So I'll say new material. And I will just make that a kind of brownish. But you want to be fairly subtle if you're doing something with a color picker in here, because it's the colors get really, really saturated. So you kind of want to keep it on the lighter side. Now change that to core. So I have my materials. So now I'll go here, and I will assign material by plugin for Rhino. I will say transparent. Hopefully this works. What just happened? Come back. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that works. And then I will select my core material, assign material, browse, core. I have two cores. Just pick out one I just made. So now I have, a model that has some transparency to it, and I can start to then, describe what volumes of parts of my project I want as transparent, what parts I want as solid. I can then start to, there's even a pretty easy way, let's see if I can remember, to make a reflective material. So if I go back to my scene manager, see if I can do this, remember this. New material, ESDF. So if I play with, which one is it? I'm just going to flip back here for a second. Reference, this guy, Maxwell, rendering export, plugin windows, scene manager, materials, metal, light gray, white, black. Can you remember that? Light gray, white, black, light gray, white, black, light gray, white, black. I think it's the roughness that I need to play with there. So here, I'll just do light gray. Okay. And I think if I play with the roughness on this, say I bring that down to 25. Yeah, that's going to make it a kind of shiny material. So let's call it shiny. And you want to have some flash in your project. So now I can select that, or I can select this. And instead of making that transparent, I can say shiny. Say OK. So now I have a kind of reflective box there going on. So you can also, I mean, I recommend there's links on here to kind of look at the breakdown of how to do some of this stuff. So I'd recommend looking into that. But if you're kind of want to just test some stuff out, you can also just, Maxwell has a pretty good library of materials. Oops. So you can pick all sorts of crazy stuff and just download it, and then you can browse to them. So you like brushed metal, wood, all this stuff. You have to be careful with this stuff because it gets super saturated, and it can make the renderings look really awful. But you know, you can play around with it, and so you can then start to play around with your model a bit. And I'll just show you. I know you guys want to get out of here, but if I just do a couple things, like there's a cool command called extract ISO curve. So I can then pick a surface, extract ISO curve, and come on, extract. So here's my surface. I can kind of pick a few moments here. Say I want to do the same. Just do this. So here I'm going to invert selection. I can turn off all my other layers except for my current one, so I can just hide some stuff so I'm not picking it. Extract. You can also just model this away from the scene. When I type extract ISO curve, I then select the surface. You can see highlighting, and if I press T for toggle, I can between that direction and that direction with it. So I can click that, then toggle, and picking a bunch of stuff randomly here. So I might actually disable my snaps for a second, so I can just pick some spots here. And I'll re-enable that to pick this guy for whatever reason. And so what I can do is, say if I want to create, like, say you just want to create a window here or a panel, a couple of things you can do. I can say pick a C-plane, C-plane to object. So now my C-plane, I'm drawing on that face there. If I type say rectangle, I can now pick those corners if I want, and then I can say split. I can extract the surface, and then I can split it, and pick that surface, pick that, and now if I hide that, I have a window, or I can alternatively, I can take that and I can move that to, my solid layer. So now if I turn some of these layers back on, and I go back to the Maxwell fire, and I reactivate that, then I'm starting to bring some materials into this. You could even, so then if I have this guy here, which I've sort of modeled kind of quickly using Boolean subtraction. So essentially for that, you just, do a box, my C-plane. So to get my C-plane back to the top, I just do that. So if I do a box, I'll go on my solid layer, do a box roughly that height, and I can do another box, say on top of him, come down a little bit, disable my snap, so I can just kind of, why are you doing that, buddy? All right, that's fine, I'll do that. And then I can move face of that guy. I'm just going to go to my side view here. So I'm just going to move that face. It's really odd. Oh, he's snapping. I have my grid snap on. That's why. So we move face. Can drag him down. Come back to here. Move him a little bit that way. Move him a little bit that way. Fully indifferent. And like that, and I get a nice little courtyard. And if I say want to make a little, set my C-plane to here, if I do another box, I can do a box here. I can move face again. Take that face, bring it through. Fully indifferent, like that guy, that guy. I'm, doing a little bit of sculpting. And then if I, bring this guy back online. So because he's on that solid layer, he comes in automatically with the material assigned to him. And then if I come back here and I come to my scene manager and I go to my little daily time here, so I can say, oh, look, Christina, I made this really lovely courtyard. Maybe I want that courtyard to be a little bigger. She'll say, oh, James, that's a nice courtyard. It's lovely. It's like Christina's like Portuguese Irish accent that I just gave her. And so I'm gonna zoom in on this a little. And then I can now just kind of track the light around that courtyard during the day, during different times of year. So one kind of final thing, you can do different kinds of views, some that are, so if you want to do like a kind of objective 3D view, you can go here, say viewport properties. If you change the parallel perspective, that makes a kind of nice axonometric kind of view to it. And we'll just use that, or you can, so one of the things about perspectives, you usually want to try, so I'm going to go back into perspective to a 2-point perspective. You always want to be cognizant of where your eye level wants to be, or should be. So, and I can go into ghosted view if I want to try and get inside here. But you want to usually take your perspectives as if you're actually a person. Sometimes I'll even put like little lines of the right height around the model just to kind of understand how tall a person is in there. So, that's kind of a potentially interesting perspective here. And if I go back to my viewport properties, again, it's a little too close in with the 50, but if I go to the 35, it's giving me a little bit more context. So maybe I'll just say I kind of like that. So I'm going to set view, name views, save as street-01. Then finally, when you're done with your kind of modeling and you want to just test out, so you can render this with the blue thing there. And this bumps you into the Maxwell render interface. So the nice things about this is you have another preview here. I can start to play with some of the settings, even after I've already set some of the things based on so I can increase the intensity of the sun as it renders. I can increase it, so physical sky is more like the ambient lighting, but the sun is more and it automatically updates it. And this is basically set to run So you see 64 hours or whatever, it'll just keep running and running and running and running until you stop it. And the image just gradually gets more and more refined. So it's pretty dusty looking right there, but that gives you at least a sense of what you're getting at. And it gets down to a pretty decent, grain pretty quickly. So the ISO, I'm not really sure what ISO means, but it gives you some effects there. Shutter, influence that. So you can kind of play around with those. So that's kind of the soup to nuts of that. And then that will give you a JPEG, or I think in what we set up was a TIFF, not a TIFF, but so the output. You can come back here if you forget where it's writing to. So that's giving me a JPEG in this folder. So if I go and browse, so then I can bring that JPEG into Photoshop and start putting like little people in it and whatnot. So then if I just go browse to that folder, would it say see users downloads Etkind around here? Downloads Etkind, where are you? Renders. Where are you? Renders. Thank you. Again, someone's paying attention. So now that's going to be here. And what I said, street, yeah. So that's the JPEG, and it's going to be there, and it's just going to be updating this. Whoops, over here. It's just going to be updating this automatically as it runs. So you can actually plug that JPEG into InDesign layout or Photoshop layout, and it'll just be running and updating that constantly. So you can have all that kind of linked. Sorry, that took a little longer, but hopefully that gives you a good starter. Yep. Yep. Because I mean, to Roger's point about the modeling is not a inputting of an already design, but it can be a generator for design. So I mean, so I showed you just some ways to work orthographically. Yep. Thanks, Roger. So, but if you want to even play around, there's some really great tools to mess around with the curve commands. So say I want to do a curve, I turn my ortho off, and I can kind of copy this. So this is just a really quick way of making a kind of interesting shape. So rotate 3D, I can pick each of these curves, keep the ortho on. Rotate them. Yeah, if you guys need to go, you can go, but if you're interested. And then I can turn on the control points, and I can go to my, I think this would be that view here. And let me just move them out of the way of this. So, I mean, it gives you a new way to think about space, which I think is something worth considering. So if I zoom in on this guy, and I turn on the control points, I can start to manipulate what that's doing, and maybe there's something about program that I'm responding to here, and then I can do the same with this guy. Maybe I drag that out a bit or something, and then I can come back here. There's a command called loft, so I pick those guys. And so now I can start to create different kinds of, shapes. I can start to manipulate those shapes. And again, I can also, if you're thinking about structure, you can divide curve by a certain number of segments, say 15 segments. And then I can, again, extract iso curve, and I can actually pull out, I'll go to point here, turn on my object snap, make sure my point is picked, and I can pick these points. And now I'm, starting to even think about like what a kind of structural idea might be for this. And I can start to think about like a And if I could even hide this, a kind of wireframe of structure that might start to inform a lot of decision making. So and then because I have my materials and everything set up, I can already now say have this have that image running. So where did that go? Maxwell fire. Oh, here it is. Oh. Huh. The interface is so if I take this guy, sorry, bring him into here, maybe he'll be happier. The computer seems to not be. Let's see. Try this again. Oh, I know what's happening. Okay, it's like that. Ah, all right. Here, render, amplifier, activate that. So it's already something that I can. So once you have all that rendering settings set up, you can already start to just be generating images that you can be developing a kind of fluid workflow. So you're actually, as you're designing, you're actually creating presentational quality stuff, and not having to like throw screenshots into your presentation all the time, but actually developing things that people might want to actually look at. So, okay. All right, great. Thanks, guys.